Today, we are diving into a really high-stakes legal drama, one that played out in America's highest courts, with hundreds of thousands of lives just hanging in the balance. This is the story of the fight for Haitian temporary protective status, a true legal battle against the clock. Just think about that for a second. What if you'd built a life, raised a family, maybe bought a home, and then, just like that, it could all be taken away? Well, this isn't some hypothetical question. This is the reality for nearly 353,000 people from Haiti who are living and working legally right here in the United States. For this massive community, their legal protection was set to just end. And that set off this dramatic legal showdown that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Okay, so let's get into it and see exactly how this whole thing unfolded. So we're actually going to start at the climax of the story. The single moment when everything was about to change. I mean, literally on the eve of the termination, we're talking hours to spare. A federal judge stepped in and just slammed on the brakes. The order went out, stop the clock. But to really get why this moment was so incredibly critical, we've got to rewind a little bit. So, what is this program that's at the heart of this whole fight? What exactly is temporary protected status, or as you'll see it, TPS? Well, TPS is basically a humanitarian lifeline that was set up by Congress way back in 1990. Now, it's not a path to citizenship. Think of it more as a temporary legal safe harbor for people whose home countries are facing just catastrophic events, making it completely impossible to return safely. And for Haiti, this story kicked off in 2010 after that absolutely devastating earthquake. But it didn't stop there. For 16 years, the government kept extending the designation because of this relentless series of crises. We're talking hurricanes, political chaos, and just escalating gang violence. And you have to understand, these aren't recent arrivals. We are talking about people who have been in the U.S. for more than a decade. They're raising tens of thousands of American-born children. They own homes. They run businesses. They are deeply, deeply woven into the fabric of our communities as essential workers in healthcare, construction, you name it. And get this, their economic footprint is massive. Altogether, Haitian TPS households earn nearly $4 billion in income. And their contribution back into the system? Just as significant. They pay almost $1 billion in federal and state taxes every single year. So the point here isn't just about the humanitarian side, it's also about a huge economic impact. Which brings us right to the event that kicked off this whole legal firestorm in the first place, the decision to end the program. So in 2025, the Department of Homeland Security under Secretary Kristi Noem made a move to end Haiti's TPS designation. Now, there was an initial attempt to just shorten the extension, but the courts blocked that. So the administration published a final notice in November saying that's it. Haitian TPS would officially be terminated on February 3rd, 2026. So what was the official reason? Well, the administration argued that the original conditions from that 2010 earthquake just didn't apply anymore. They said keeping the program going was, and I quote, contrary to the national interest, even while they acknowledged the severe gang violence that was happening in Haiti. Well, that decision was challenged almost immediately, and the fight moved from government offices straight into the federal courthouse. Let's look at how the courts pushed back. Okay, so this is the heart of that last-minute save we talked about earlier. In this sweeping 83-page opinion, Judge Ana Reyes just laid out this powerful case for blocking the termination. First, she found the decision was arbitrary and capricious, saying it failed to consider what she called Haiti's perfect storm of suffering. The judge also noted the decision seemed to be driven by hostility, not facts, that the DHS failed to follow the rules by not consulting with other agencies, and that it totally ignored the massive economic contributions of all these TPS holders. So the administration appealed, of course, but the D.C. Circuit Court agreed with the lower court. The majority opinion was pretty blunt. The government couldn't prove it would be harmed by letting the program continue while the case was being decided. But the harm to TPS holders, they called it devastating. You'd think that would be it, right? But the fight was not over. The administration immediately took its case to the nation's highest court. So the government went to the Supreme Court with a two-part ask. First, they wanted an emergency order to lift that block right away, which would let the termination happen immediately while the legal fight was still going on. And second, they asked for a fast-tracked hearing on the entire case. And that is where things stand right now. Because of those court orders, TPS is still active, work permits are still valid. But for those nearly 353,000 people, their future is completely up in the air. totally dependent on the next court ruling. They're just living in this state of profound, prolonged limbo. This whole legal battle has provided some absolutely critical breathing room, a temporary shield against deportation and total disruption. But the core question is still there. For all these families and business owners and essential workers, yeah, they are protected today. But what about tomorrow? Their fate now rests in the hands